What is going on YouTube? This is Ask the Root. So I'm going to review the debut album by PSC. Basically, this album is called 25 to Life, and it came out in the fall of 2005. And PSC stands for Pimp Squad Click. It's T.I.'s group. So T.I. had a group on his Grand Hustle label, which kind of dropped mixtapes throughout the mid 2000s and stuff. They actually have a number of projects. There's another one of these that I want to review that I didn't realize that they did, but it's interesting enough just because PSC had a pretty hit album here. That's the thing. It was anchored by the single I'm a King, which was also on the Hustle and Flow soundtrack. If you're looking for that particular soundtrack, I reviewed that a few years ago, so you can see that on this channel. But yeah, this album was only anchored by a handful of singles. I mean, really, like nowadays, it just seems like the only single from this project was I'm a King, but it did have a couple other ones that kind of had some music videos like Do Your Thing and then Set It Out. So I would definitely have to say this is a pretty stellar project here. I feel like this is definitely, in my opinion, I feel like this album with T.I. kind of on supporting cast on here is better than trap music. I feel like this, maybe the singles aren't quite as impactful as the ones on trap music, but I feel like the album is just overall better. This is definitely going to get a very rave score, and it gets pretty close to getting a 10 out of 10. It's just that good. I feel like it's up there with King. It's pretty much better than T.I. versus TIP, and I think it competes with King and Paper Trail, some of T.I.'s best. This is just prime T.I., where he was still kind of hungry, but he balanced it by having his group with him, and they had some kind of ravenous verses on here. Now, it's kind of said, like some critics had said, that PSC is not much to speak of in the lyrics department, but I feel like they had kind of enough bite to be able to talk. I feel like PSC had enough bite to be able to hold their own. It's just too bad that they didn't get a further kind of accommodation in terms of the singles. Like, really, the only real song that really got that much attention was just I'm a King, which was this also seen as a part of like the Hustle and Flow soundtrack. And on that version, the Hustle and Flow soundtrack, it had Lil Scrappy on there to bolster it even further. So really, this version of the song that's on this album just didn't feel like it got that much attention. So really, it was somewhat disappointing that the PSC album just kind of got downplayed, but I do see it as kind of like a decent stopgap. And this is kind of the transformation stage for T.I. when he started making, where he started really having the Midas touch, where this is kind of between Urban Legend and King, where Urban Legend was kind of a bubbler, it was kind of a more commercial version of trap music and just broadcasted a lot better. And then King was his full blown breakthrough. But this one, despite the fact that it didn't chart that well and it didn't have like the sheer velocity in terms of commercial apex, I still do feel like it kind of had like some bite towards it. I definitely feel like it had some bite towards it, and T.I. in particular was pretty hungry on here. I just have to say that his verses, he's not on every song out of all 15 of these songs, but every song that he's on is like a highlight just because of how well he effortlessly kind of handles the context of doing it. So this is kind of like basically like a 2005 T.I. album. It's just good enough to kind of get that, even if he only drops one verse or just a quick 16 or something like that. It just happens to be with enough pungentness that this is kind of like a bonus T.I. album in a lot of ways. So I definitely like that concept. This is just an overall highlight, and pretty much I would say probably one of the best rap albums out of 2005. I think it's up there with like the Games documentary. I think it's better than Kanye West Late Registration. It's up there with Lil Wayne's The Carter 2. Better than Birdman's Fast Money. Some of these particular projects, it's just an overall quality hit. And this is just kind of an overlooked and underrated project on top of that. I feel like, for the most part, when you talk about just the lyricism of it and just seeing that, for the most part, this album just didn't get the commercial attention, it kind of interrupts the idea as far as trying to say that it was really something. But I look after it, like the concept behind it kind of deals with the fact that this don't pay attention too much to like the critic standpoint and just that overall feeling, because despite the fact of this lack of commercial hubbub, I feel like there is some gems on here. Definitely a lot of club bops, a lot of good varietized stuff. It just has a lot of variety. It's just interesting that it kind of pulled it off, but we'll talk about that throughout the singles and then throughout the rest of the album so you can get towards it. So Yeah, basically the lead single, and in some cases the only real single off this project, was "I'm a King," which, like I said, was also on the Hustle and Flow soundtrack. This one has "I'm a King" has a Lil Jon production, which is too bad that Lil Jon didn't produce more songs on here. But it's interesting to kind of get Ti and Lil Jon as a team up, just because Ti was more swag rap, and Lil Jon was more crunk. So this is kind of like a melding of those two styles, which works pretty well. "I'm a King" just has a nice hook on here. It's definitely like a nice summer boiler. Just as a crunk with a swag type feel towards it. It's just an overall club gem, just an immediate kind of hit. And this version, the one that doesn't have Lil Scrappy on there, is not quite the one that doesn't have Lil Scrappy on there is not quite as presentable, but I do feel like it has enough gleam towards it to be able to say that it's still a highlight. This is just an overall good song. This is definitely like a good look for Ti to at least say that. It's just an overall good song that he needed in 2005 after the Urban Legend promotion kind of wrapped up, because Motivation didn't do that well. But I mean, it was a good song, but it just didn't. That's just kind of the concept that it just kind of carried Ti into 2006 when he started promoting King and stuff. But yeah, the other two singles, which "Do You Thing" was the second single, and this is like, I mean, I don't know if I mean, back in the day, Wikipedia said that these were singles. I visited Wikipedia for a while, but just to kind of say, it used to be more information where it would say that "Do You Thing" was the second single and "Set It Out" was the third single. These both had music videos. "Do You Thing" was in the Need for Speed video game, one of those games from back in the day. Need for Speed Most Wanted. So "Do You Thing" is basically like a glittering kind of club crunch type tune. Definitely a nice night gleam, and this has that overall sparkling kind of energy. One of the better beats on here. Definitely a real kind of glistening kind of beat. This overall, it's probably. I mean, I feel like the "I'm a King" with Lil Jon beat is pretty crunk type one, but this one kind of steps away from crunk and kind of has like a more kind of like very similar to "Trap or Die" by Jeezy type feel. Just that overall kind of glistening and kind of imperative sounding type feel towards it. Just a great hook on here. Just overall, the hook really rocks. This is a kick ass one. And as a bonus, Young Dro is on here. So Young Dro was kind of a part of PSC somewhat. He was kind of like an unofficial affiliate, that type of stuff. But it's just interesting getting some Young Dro verses from 2005 and stuff. And then "Set It Out's another nice one. This was kind of the third single, or at least the attempted third single. At least had a music video for it. But it's just, to me, it kind of feels like a barbecue type song. Definitely like a summer glaze kind of energy about it. This has like some nice warm weather kind of feel. This is an overall kind of breezy song. This feels like a cookout song. This really something for like a hot June or July kind of day. It's kind of interesting. I mean, Ti doesn't always do this type of song. I'm trying to think of something like maybe like "Let's Get Away" from trap music or something like that. But it's just interesting getting like a Ti posse type song with this overall kind of feel good summer vibe. So it's just a nice one as far as that kind of goes. It's kind of a song for ladies, but kind of more about just not letting the hoes kind of work you and that type of stuff, work you over and that type of stuff. In terms of the rest of the album, there's 15 songs on here, and I wound up recommending to you 11. So I'm just going to go ahead and recommend those 11 songs, and we'll talk about the 4 songs I didn't enjoy and stuff like that, and the songs I did enjoy. So the 11 songs would be "I'm a King," "Do You Thing," "Set It Out," "Like a Movie," "Mess It Up," "Coming Down," "Fuck Where You From," "West Side," "Touch Something," "Walk This Way," and "Still I Love Her." Yeah, I feel like a real immediate highlight, probably one of the best beats on here. Probably one of the best beats on here, and probably overall one of the best songs on here is "Mess It Up." This is just a really glitzy kind of club slammer. Definitely feel like this is a suave ladies bop, and the beat just oozes goodness. Probably definitely one of the best, most sophisticated and just oozing kind of charisma kind of songs on here. Just has a real kind of glitzy beat. Nice little club bop as far as that kind of goes. I feel like a Movie is like a mellow kind of breezy. I feel like a Movie with Lloyd on the hook is kind of like a mellow breezy type promo gem. Definitely one for stepping out. It's interesting to kind of get Ti on a promo song. I mean, Ti kind of does some things on this album that he doesn't typically do, that feel kind of secondary, that he wouldn't normally do on some of his albums, like teaming up with Lil Jon, getting a hook from CeeLo Green, doing a promo song with Lloyd and that type stuff, and like making like a summer cookout song. These are just some interesting kind of secondary type Ti type things that I don't think he would have done on King or something like that. It's just interesting kind of get that. But "Like a Movie" is definitely like a promo gem, definitely for something for stepping out and kind of like a date night, something like that. Just overall flashiness, just kind of like a real mellow and just kind of relaxed and just casual kind of day as far as that kind of goes. Just a nice summer kind of relatively breeze and just date night kind of feel. This overall, this is a good kind of cut for just that sort of outgoingness as far as that kind of goes. It's a nice one. Lloyd does a pretty good job on the hook, like I figured he would, just like he did on Bedrock and songs like that. Coming Down was a clever one. This is another real clever one. This is kind of a winding down song. It's definitely kind of like a dusky summer evening type tune. I would see it as even a song for getting snacks and goodies in like the evening hours. Just something for like 7:15, 6:45, 5:45 when the sun is still out and it's kind of warm and that type of stuff. Just getting some snacks, getting some Chex Mix or Fritos or stuff like that, Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, some of those type things, just getting some goodies and just things like that as you get ready to have like a good time. I mean, it I guess it wouldn't be getting ready to have a good time, but just kind of in a more winding down for maybe already having a good time. It's a good song to listen to when you're hungover or just coming down from smoking a lot, something like that. Those kind of vibes. Just an overall kind of just real like engaging, just kind of bewildering, kind of mellow energy about it. It's just an overall nice tune for that. There are some kind of more street and urban cuts on here. A couple that are really some flexing kind of songs would be Fuck Where You From and West Side, where I feel like West Side is definitely kind of a menacing club cut. This one's definitely a nice song for flexing and that type of stuff. This is an overall kind of biting and kind of overall, it's just an overall kind of more rugged and rigid kind of tune. It's definitely a night out song with some edge. Definitely feel like West Side is just an overall good one. It just has like this really kind of glittering and tittering, kind of flittering kind of beat on there. It just really works as that kind of goes. It is a club cut. It reminds me of the sort of stuff that Jeezy was doing on Thug Motivation 101. This is kind of one that takes a page out of that playbook. It's interesting to kind of get that. And then speaking of Jeezy, he shows up on Fuck Where You From, which is another kind of sinister, very leery song. It's definitely an urban and street cut on here. Has some bite. I mean, really, all three of the lyricists, Mac Boney, T.I., and Young Jeezy, all have pretty ferocious bite on here. They just sound extra inspired on this song. The threats just really feel impactful on this song as far as that kind of goes. Just an overall nice flexing kind of song as far as that goes. I mean, it can kind of be seen as a club song, but this one's more of just like a kind of menacing kind of song more so than some of the other songs on here. The only other song I feel like that's kind of like that, well, there's three songs. I would say Fuck Where You From, West Side, and Murder Game all kind of have that sort of pitch. I liked at least two out of three of them, Fuck Where You From and West Side. Touch Something's a pretty nice one. Another angle that T.I. has on this album that's pretty nice is just these kind of house party bops. So it's interesting that T.I. kind of would occasionally have some house party gems on here. I feel like Touch Something's a very paced kind of house party gem with like an irregular kind of, it's a very paced kind of house party gem. I feel like this can also be like an irregular night kind of nightclub song. It wouldn't be something that would typically get played like I'm a King or Mess It Up or Set It Out or Do Your Thing or something like that. But I think just on a random kind of night where maybe, I mean, I know obviously it's almost a 20-year-old song at this stage, but just to kind of say and stuff in just a random spot, maybe at some vintage Atlanta club would still play songs like this, it still hits pretty hard. I mean, it's definitely a pretty quick paced type song and definitely has some energy for it, but I would just see it as like a decent kind of a regular kind of night for a nightclub. Walk This Way with CeeLo Green on the hook is a pretty nice breezy song. It's definitely a smoother ladies cut where I feel like a Movie and Mess It Up were some good ones. It's actually surprising the sheer number of lady songs that are on this album. There's actually more than two or three that are on here that are just really good. But Walk This Way is a smoother one. It's somewhat down tempo, but it doesn't slip. So it's definitely one that has that down tempo feel, and it's just kind of more mellow. T.I. even says at the beginning of the song that he can't even get on some pimp shit to be able to talk like with his normal kind of swag and charisma, but it is a pretty nice song that despite the fact that it's not quicker and more concerned with macking and that type of stuff, it does kind of have the vibe of not slipping up on here. So this is kind of a more kind of sluggish and more relaxed T.I. song that's actually pretty stellar in that sort of context. Plus CeeLo does a pretty nice job on the hook. So this is interesting, kind of smooth one before he would go on to do like Gnarls Barkley and some of that. And then Still I Love Her is kind of, this one was one I was almost on the fence about, but I wound up ultimately liking it. This is another house party bop and has like a real low key kind of feel. this it's very unsung. I feel like this production on here is just very unsung. It kind of has like some guitar like stuff in here, but it's also kind of like a thumping, kind of plodding beat that doesn't really suit this song that well. It's just kind of dramatic and kind of almost like an awkward sense. It just this beat just doesn't hit up front, but I still ultimately wound up liking it mainly because of T.I. and Young Dro's verses. They just kind of carried the charisma of this song. And it just overall, I can kind of see this as being just like a kind of dramatic kind of house party song where you're starting to see some chicks here and they're just really kind of starting to cast a spell on you and that type of stuff, just that sort of concept. I mean, this one just happens to be a party gem. It's just a lot more kind of like flamboyant. I would just have to say it's just a little bit more where it's not like the central. This is the one that's going to get the asses shaken and that type of stuff. But just for a continual night or evening at a house party, something like that, this is just a good one to kind of hear. And that's just kind of the context about it. So those are just some good ones. In terms of talking about the four songs that I didn't enjoy, like those songs would just be 25 to Life, Murder Gang, Number One Crew, and then Looking Shy. Mostly the songs that I didn't enjoy were just the ones without T.I., which he picked some songs that just didn't have very good beats. Like I feel like Looking Shy and Number One Crew were just kind of more awkward ones. Like I kind of like the slinky beat of Number One Crew, but I think it needed like a rapper like Young Dro on there. I mean, I do recognize Big Country King, but I just didn't quite vibe with that one as much. And then Looking Shy was just kind of like Looking Shy was trying to be like a breezy kind of summery tune, kind of similar to Rubber Band Man, but just didn't quite pull it off nearly as well. This really needed like a little bit more like compellingness. And then 25 to Life, I just didn't appreciate that production on that one. And yeah, I mean, really, it just boils down to the fact that I feel like 25 to Life, just the title track 25 to Life just kind of felt pedestrian, just needed probably T.I. on there or a better beat, something like that. This was not quite as thrilling and not necessarily a great way to kick off the album. Murder Gang was kind of like a worse version of West Side and Fuck Where You From, where I just kind of feel like that one just didn't have quite the bite. I mean, it did have a similar beat to West Side, but it wasn't quite as compelling. I feel like some of these thug posturing songs hit their mark for what they were, but I can't see too many moments where I would have the veneer to want to listen to them that often. Like I did at least appreciate West Side. That was kind of like a nice club bop, but Murder Gang was just a full blown posturing kind of song that just was not up my alley that much. So I just look at that atmosphere, but that about takes care of it. So to say me liking 11 songs out of 15, I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 9.25 out of 10. It just did it that well. The social score, I'll probably give it a 10 out of 10 just because there's that many hits. I mean, I would have to say I do feel somewhat miffed over the fact that this album just not miffed at PSC or Ti or the rest of them or Grand Hustle, because this album is quite quality, but just the fact of the reception that this album got is because there's so many gems on here. I mean, I listen to songs like Mess It Up and Do You Thing and Set It Out and like a Movie and some of those type songs. I just wonder why this album just did not do gapingly better. I mean, it went gold, which means it sold 500,000 copies, but 20 years later, I don't know why this album hasn't gone platinum or something like that. I give the social score a 10 because it's chock full of hits, has plenty of them, has promo songs, has uh, flexing songs, has soulful kind of lady songs, has plenty of lady songs, has some good club songs, has a little John beat on here, just plenty of stuff to kind of highlight. And this really doesn't even feel like it came out of 2005 as effective as it is. Just a state of the art, probably one of the best rap albums I would have to say out of 2005. I don't know if I said that before, but I'll say it again. It's just a nice one. So in terms of the future, like PSC has at least dropped more projects. There's another one that I want to review soon enough, and I am going to get to that. But I just would have to say that this is some good stuff here, and I am going to review more T.I., but this is definitely a good placeholder and just kind of a forgotten about album by T.I. that I recommend, and definitely just don't think that the best and only good song is just I'm a King.